Welcome to the Explainer. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's just jump right in. Look, right now, there's this incredibly expensive, widespread misconception echoing through boardrooms and dev teams all over the world. And honestly, it is about to cost the tech industry millions. For over a year now, an entire compliance industry has been gearing up for the EU AI Act's high-risk regime to drop on August 2nd, 2026. But then the timeline shifted, and almost everyone collectively exhaled and just stopped preparing. But as we're going to see today, putting your compliance strategy on pause right now is a massive mistake.
Okay, let's dive into this. The consultant's pitch, it sounds amazing, right? They're telling everyone the massive Digital Omnibus on AI was approved in late June, so that scary August deadline for high-risk systems is dead. Board decks were rewritten, budgets were paused, and this huge wave of relief washed over the industry. But here is the reality check. That sense of relief is completely false. While the crushing high-risk rules were indeed delayed, the transparency deadline, the one almost nobody actually prepared for, was left completely intact, and it is arriving in exactly 11 days. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the moving deadline myth, the new compliance calendar, and those transparency rules that are due right now. Then we'll hit the publisher's dilemma, debunk the self-hosting myth, and finally, map out your exact next compliance steps.
All right, part 1, the moving deadline myth, and what actually changed.
To understand why everyone is so turned around on this, we've got to look at what August 2nd, 2026 was originally supposed to be. It was meant to be the ultimate high-risk cliff for the EU AI Act. But by late 2025, it was totally obvious the EU was visibly off track. Harmonized standards weren't finished, national authorities weren't ready, and notified body capacity just didn't exist. So the Commission proposed to delay via the Digital Omnibus. And wow, it was an absolute roller coaster. On April 28th, the political trialogue actually collapsed without an agreement. For a few terrifying days, the original unamended deadline was a live scenario. Negotiators had to scramble back to the table, they reached a provisional agreement on May 7th, followed by Parliament endorsement in June, and finally Council approval on June 29. This really illustrates just how volatile the regulatory environment is right now. Think about it. The EU came within one single failed negotiation of enforcing a high-risk AI regime with zero harmonized standards in place. That staggering near miss is the honest verdict on how this rollout is actually going. It proves that these enforcement dates are not just bluffs or moving targets that you can safely ignore. Moving on to part 2, the new compliance calendar and the 5 waves of rules. So if that cliff moved, what is the actual legal reality today? What exactly did the Digital Omnibus change? Well, the new master schedule basically staggers obligations into 5 distinct waves. Yes, scheduled for December 2027 and August 2028, we do hit that massive 16-month delay for Annex 3 high-risk systems and embedded AI. But looking at the immediate term, August 2, 2026 is still very much alive for Article 50 transparency obligations. Then, just a few months later on December 2, we hit legacy transition dates and, really importantly, brand new prohibitions on AI systems used to generate non-consensual explicit imagery and child sexual abuse material. The Omnibus also threw in a very narrow GDPR allowance for processing special category data for bias detection, but trust me on this, it is heavily safeguarded and definitely not a free pass to mine sensitive data. The big takeaway here, you do not have until 2028 to relax. Your first major deadline is literally next week. Section 3, the transparency rules that are due in just 11 days. And that brings us right into the immediate trap. The transparency obligations kicking in right now, which the entire advisory industry seems to have glossed over. You'll hear people toss around Article 50 like it's just one simple disclosure rule. Actually, scratch that. It is absolutely not. It's an umbrella for at least 5 distinct, highly specific obligations. They bind different actors. Some target the providers who build the models, while others target the deployers who actually use them. And they all have totally different exceptions. If you conflate them into one monolithic rule, you are going to end up either wildly overcomplying and wasting money, or dangerously undercomplying and risking some serious fines. So, here are the 5 obligations hitting in 11 days. First up, chatbot disclosure. If you run an EU-facing support bot or any conversational interface, you have to let users know they're talking to a machine. Second, provider-side content marking. Third, notices for emotion recognition and biometric categorization. Fourth, deepfake labeling. If you manipulate media to resemble real people or events, you must disclose its artificial origin, though, to be fair, there are carve-outs for obvious satire or art. And fifth, public interest text disclosure. Listen, if you're operating a system that touches any of these, the August 22nd deadline is absolutely yours.
I want to really zero in on that second one on the list for a second, provider-side content marking, because it is heavily misunderstood. This is a technical obligation for generative systems to mark synthetic outputs, things like audio, image, video, and text, in a machine-readable format. We're talking about watermarking, metadata, or provenance signals baked right into the back end. This is not just a visible sticker you slap on an image. The one piece of good news here is a narrow legacy carve-out. If your system is already on the market by August 2, you do get until December 2, 2026 to implement this specific technical marking.
Part 4. The Publisher's Dilemma. Pitting AI against human workflows.
Now, let's pivot to the fifth transparency obligation because it creates a massive dilemma for anyone running digital publishing or editorial properties. The AI Act essentially divides the entire content industry right down the middle. Consider programmatic SEO. If you have an unattended content pipeline pushing unreviewed, AI-generated articles straight to WordPress on matters of public interest, the law requires you to explicitly disclose that the text is AI-generated. Now, the AI Act doesn't ban this automated pipeline, it just forces it into the light. Contrast that with publications running human editorial workflows. If a named human reviews the AI-assisted content, applies judgment, and takes editorial responsibility for it, you're exempt from the disclosure. Basically, if your editorial process is just a cron job, you have 11 days to either add an AI disclosure label or hire an editor.
All right, Section 5. Debunking the self-hosting myth. Local versus cloud.
We really need to debunk a massive, honestly pretty dangerous technical assumption we're seeing right now among developers and startup founders. There's this pervasive idea out there that running open weight models on your own local hardware somehow magically shields you from the AI Act. Let me state this as plainly as the source material does. Local inference is a data protection simplification. It is not an AI Act exemption. Article 50 obligations are use-based. They attach to what your system actually does and who it interacts with, not where the weights happen to be running. A customer support chatbot hosted on your own server rack in Germany needs the exact same disclosure as one running on OpenAI's Cloud API.
And finally, Section 6. Your next compliance steps in which you absolutely must do right now.
So we've covered the myths, the reality, the actual rules, but what are the stakes if you get it wrong? Under Article 99 of the regulation, the penalty architecture backs these transparency violations with fines up to 15 million euros, or 3% of your worldwide annual turnover. To put that into perspective, this is not just a slap on the wrist. This is a serious structural financial risk for failing to disclose a chatbot or label a deepfake. Now, you might be thinking, well, the supervisory authorities in the member states are way behind schedule themselves, right? They probably won't enforce this on day one. And hey, you might be right that month one enforcement is a bit of an unknown, but betting your entire compliance posture on continued regulatory unreadiness is a terrible strategy. August 2nd, 2026 stopped being a high-risk cliff and transformed into a very effective filter. It's now a filter designed to catch who actually read the law and who just read the consultant headlines. So look, don't panic spend against the old deadline, but definitely do not stand down. Here's a really calm 3-step action plan you can kick off this very afternoon. Step 1. Inventory exactly where Article 50 touches your products. Are you running chatbots, generating deepfakes, or publishing public interest text? Confirm your disclosures for those specific touchpoints by August 2. Step 2. Log those December 2, 2026 transition dates for legacy content marking and the new explicit imagery prohibitions. Step 3. Take a breath and use that genuine 16-month delay to properly do your Annex 3 classification and documentation against the finalized standards. The bottom line, that high-risk regime is coming in late 2027, whether the regulators are fully ready or not. We've seen exactly how close they are willing to push it. So I want to leave you with this final thought to take back to your teams today. As the rest of the industry rests on false assumptions, are you paying for a delay or are you preparing for the reality? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Go start your inventory today, and I'll see you next time.